You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, episode number 218.2. The Indianapolis Stars' Kyle Neddenriep previews the boys basketball state championship with guest Michelle Garmon of the Tipton Tribune and Elwood Call Leader.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengels.
It is state championship weekend, and who better to have on to talk about it than Indiana's best high school sports reporter, and that, of course, is Kyle Neddenriep of the, I think I already said Indianapolis Star. Kyle, what are you looking forward to most on Saturday? Any game in particular you're looking forward to the most?
I think they'll all be good. I think, there's potential that all four games are going to be really close. And obviously I would say depending on what your rooting interests are, I think from a general fan perspective, the last game is the one that, you're kind of like curious to see if Fishers can, close out history and finish a winning, a undefeated season and a 44-game winning streak potentially. And can Jeffersonville make that difficult for them? And I think they can. It just they're going to have to play really well. And that's kind of I think the 3A game is going to be really fun to watch. Just as a fan of the game, the up and down sort of style that St. Joe plays, and Ken Christmas Addicts, really impose its will inside with Desmond Briscoe, and they can play fast too. So that should be a fun game to watch. I really think all four of these games have a lot of intrigue and could be really close. Not just saying that, I really do believe that.
It's four great matchups, exciting, and all of them, the teams that have gotten here have had to win a close game at some point to get here. Even though Fishers is undefeated, it hasn't been them romping through the tournament so much. However, do you think their experience of having been there, cut down the nets last year, and just their experience of the tough sectionals and stuff, tournament they played in, is that an advantage for them against Jeffersonville?
I think it is. I think they've been through this week of preparing for the state finals last year. They've played in big games, throughout these last 2 years, really, with this largely the same group of people. But also you're dealing with a Jeffersonville team that's pretty veteran in its own right, and has a lot of experience as a group. They went to basically I was at the game last year when they were right there, almost beat Ben Davis in the semi-state championship game. Probably should have beat them. Looking back at that, they were ahead, with about a minute to go. Couldn't quite close it out. So we could have seen this game last year. We're really close to it. So I don't know, from a standpoint of being on that stage Saturday, there's definitely an advantage for Fishers. But I think once you get out there and start playing, I don't think Jeff's going to be overwhelmed by the moment. They're mostly a senior-led team with Trey Singleton, Michael Cooper, and PJ Douglas, and they have some other pieces too that are, new to the team this year, like Terrence Nord, who came in, and he's the nephew of Sarah Nord, who was Miss Basketball from there. Gosh, probably 25 years ago or so. But
one of my favorites.
He's a guy who came in and had a great moment in that semi-state at Newcastle, and hit a big 3-pointer. And there's other guys like that on this team too, like Sean Boyd, who only averages 4 points a game, but had a big performance there. So I guess what I'm saying is I think there is an advantage from being there, but I don't know that it's after we play a few minutes. I don't think it's going to matter that much on Saturday night.
The only other one returning is St. Joe, right?
Yeah, St. Joe. The first four teams actually, or the first two games, those four teams, they're all newcomers. I've never been there before. So that's kind of unique, too. I think that'll make for a fun atmosphere because there's no old hat at this. This will be a new thing for all four of those schools and communities.
Are there any particular individual matchups that you are you're looking forward to on Saturday, and whether it be one or two per game or more? I know Trey Singleton, he's big inside. Is that a matchup for the concern for Fishers?
And yes. Yeah, that's something John Anthony Hall actually brought up at the meeting on Monday was, they basically admitted, like, hey, this is going to be a problem for us. How do we, it's something they're going to have to kind of get ready for. And they don't necessarily, not many teams do anyway, have a 6'9" or 6'8" guy who can move as well as Singleton can on the court. And I don't expect John Anthony Hall to guard Singleton the whole game. I think that could be something they go to at some point. I think he will start out on Michael Cooper at the guard spot and begin there anyway, and then maybe move off to Singleton at some point in that game. But I think that's probably the direction they'll go. I don't know who they'll have starting on Singleton, possibly Nathan Baker, who is, about 6'7", but doesn't, move as well as Singleton. But again, it's a matchup not many people can really get ready for. So a lot of it's going to be like help defense, collapsing on him when he gets the ball. But he is able to navigate and drive and make a move and go. So it's not like he's just getting fed in the post all the time either.
Now, I think fans should be in for a treat. There's some talented, athletic big guys, and you have Singleton for Jeffersonville. I think Briscoe is impressive for Crispus Attucks, and then you've got Gavin Benton for Manchester. And I think fans are going to enjoy watching Benton play. And he's not just a traditional 6'7", go down and post player. I mean, his passing ability, his athleticism is just really good too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something they talked about at the meeting as well. And he's a guy not afraid to give it up. I mean, he's averaging, I think he's over 4 assists per game. So that kind of shows that he's not a black hole at all. But yeah, 6'6". He's going to Grace. Obviously, they've done a great job recruiting the state and getting players that fit their system and winning with them. So, I can't wait to see him. I have not covered a Manchester game in person yet, so I'm looking forward to that, to seeing him in person. And I've seen him a lot on video, obviously, and those sorts of, and streaming. But yeah, I think that's going to be, they're more of like a 2 or 3 man team as far as scoring goes. They've got Ethan Hendricks who, hit a huge shot against Jimtown with about 8 seconds left, and they were down by 2, and it was about a 24, 25 footer, and he just drained it from the right wing. And, so he's a guy, he can score he's got about 18 points a game on his average, and he's a pretty high assist guy too. So they play 2-man game with him and Benton a lot, and then they have a kid named Talon Torpy who's a senior guard as well, who is about 10 points a game. But after that, they kind of drop off scoring wise. Those 3 kind of handle the majority of that, and they want to play through Benton. I mean, they were, even at the at the meeting the other day saying, hey, we've tried to make it a goal to feed him early and sort of free everybody else up. And so I think that, Justin Blanding from University, I was talking to him the other day, and, he kind of mentioned that, they're a team where, you kind of game plan against a couple guys, and that's, it's harder than it sounds because nobody's stopped them yet. But they're kind of a different type of team where they're way more balanced. Max McComb is their leading scorer, but he hasn't led them in the tournament necessarily. It's been Blake Gray, who's their second leading scorer. So, teams will probably put their best guy on McComb, who's a really good athletic 6'4" guard. But they can, they get points from Gray. They get points from Faisal Muhammad, who's a junior guard. They have a name people will know, Josh Henderson, or they may not know his name, but his dad's name, Alan Henderson. Alan played at IU, of course, in Brebeuf, and his son's a sophomore, 6'6" sophomore on the university's team. So he's a guy who's come on late. He had an injury that kept him out for a while. He's only played about half the season, but he's another interesting player for them. So yeah, that'll be more of a kind of a university's more of kind of a balanced team. Manchester more of we need to get points out of basically 2-3 guys.
Looking at the Class A game, have you had a chance to watch some film or anything, or what can you tell us about Orleans? I mean, they've had to go through the gauntlet just to get here. So
they have, and I went down 2 years ago, and some of the players from that team were on this team, but I went down and covered a Lagodi game, and it went to 4 overtimes. Actually, they ended up winning that game, but then last year they played a 5 overtime game in the sectional against Bar Eve, but lost. So, Tom Bradley, he's been there for a long time as their coach. He's from there, graduated from there. He retired as a teacher a couple of years ago, but has continued to coach and done a great job. I mean, if you talk to people in the coaching world, he's a guy that they really enjoy when he comes to clinics and talks about basketball. He's a really interesting guy, and they learn a lot from him. They're a team that shoots the 3 really well. A kid named Rylan Crocker hit a huge shot for them against Hauser, about a 15-foot fadeaway jumper in the lane that won that game by 2. And then he had a big steal against Clay City. Kind of poked it away from behind, and then his teammate there, Bryce Jones, got a free throw to put him ahead in the last, I think, 3.2 or something like that left in the game. So he was clutch for them last week in the semi-state. He's their leading scorer. Crocker is about 16 a game. But they're, that community will come out in full force, I'm sure, tomorrow morning, and it'll be a madhouse because they're hungry for basketball. They're hungry for a winner there. It's one of those communities that really kind of rallies around its basketball team. They don't have football, and it's definitely a basketball community.
But Clinton Prairie, I actually have seen them play. Tipton played them this year, and actually I think Tipton played them last year too in the Clinton Central tournament, and then of course they're in Tri-Central's conference, and of course they have the McGraw kid who's really good. I know Coach Cliff Hawkins said that he thinks that what makes Clinton Prairie so difficult is just the kind of maybe junk or tricky defenses that Chad Peckinpah puts out that they run.
Yeah, I think that'll be, he's obviously a guy who's, grown up with it. Was an Indian All-Star back in his day. Of course, his dad was a great coach, and I can't believe it's already been 9 years since McCutcheon played in the state finals against Romeo Langford in that New Albany team. But yeah, I think with Clinton Prairie, it's it's another community. They just. I think they're going to really get behind their team, and they haven't even won a sectional since '82. So that kind of tells you what kind of ride they're on right now. Jake McGraw, you mentioned Michelle. He's the fifth of 5 brothers, and he kind of joking the other day, I was like, "Do you have bragging rights now, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, I'm already bragging." So that's no problem there. But yeah, he's a handful. 23 points a game and 6'5", really good size. Passes the ball well. He's not necessarily going to go out and just drain a bunch of threes, but he's kind of an attacking style of player. And I'm sure Orleans will have something for him. And I'm sure, like you mentioned, Peckinpah is going to mix up their defenses too against Orleans and try to make it tough on Crocker for sure. But I think this will be a really good matchup. Could be a game where you see the score down a little bit. Orleans is kind of a team that wants to control the style of play to a certain extent, but they also shoot the 3 really well. They've won some games that have been higher scoring, like that Hauser game was 69-67. So they can fill it up too. So yeah, I really like this matchup, and I think it's going to be really energetic in that gym tomorrow morning, pretty early.
The whole city, I think the whole city of Indianapolis, especially will have an energy to it, especially if Purdue would pull off the upset over Houston Friday night.
Yeah, we're all going to be groggy because we got to stay up late tonight and try to watch that game. What are they doing to us?
That's right. Well, Kyle, you're not just covering the state finals. You have a very busy week, all kinds of all-star announcements, of course, coming from the Indianapolis Star. Tell us what you're working on.
Yeah, the Junior All-Stars just came out today, so if the boys anyway, so if people want to look for that, that came out. And then also Mark Urban was named the coach for the senior team for the boys. So we'll obviously have more coming on all of that as far as the All-Star team and more information, everything coming out of the top 60s on Sunday. So normally it kind of after that, then they sit down and decide, make final cuts and everything with the coaches on the All-Star team. So I think it looks pretty, I don't think there'll be a lot of huge surprises necessarily with the All-Star team this year, but there's always kids who don't make it who, feel like they should have been on, and they're not wrong. I always say, like, I understand. I'm not saying, there's been a lot of players over the years who deserve to make it who didn't, and it's just because it's for one reason or another, and sometimes nothing they could have done differently. So but those are always tough. Even on the junior team this year, I was like, man, where's Cam Hafner from Westfield? I really thought he would be on that team. EJ Hazlitt from Franklin Central. So you can kind of nitpick and wonder sometimes, but also it's like, as a friend of mine always says, like, well, who are you going to take? You have to, if you're going to say this kid should be on, who are you saying should be off? So that's always something you got to think about too. But it's the junior team's out. The core group is Justin Curry from Noblesville, Luke Ertl from Mount Vernon, Kai McGrew from Lawrence North, Stephen Reynolds from South Bend, Washington, Dikembe Shaw from Crown Point, and then Noah Smith from Plainfield. So those six made the core team. They'll play on June 1st and June 4th, I want to say. Yeah, June 1st and 4th. The June 1st game is against Kentucky, and then the June 4th game is at Greenfield Central against the boys Indiana All-Stars. So, and I'm assuming Braylon Mullins will make that team, I would think. It's at Greenfield Central. So
I think he's a really good candidate, I'll say that.
I think he's got a good shot.
I think he's got a good shot to be wearing number 1 on his
I think
his
so.
jersey. What did you think? What do you think about all of these? I mean, there's quite a lot of coaching changes right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many will end up happening. I mean, in my area, I know we're all over. Depends on what area of the state you're in. Sometimes year to year, if you're going to have a lot or not. But it seemed like last year we didn't have that many, so then you kind of expect the next year there'll be more. I was surprised by Hamilton Southeastern a little bit. John Ashworth stepped down yesterday. He kind of, told me ahead of time he was going to put that out there, and I wasn't. I will say I was surprised because they finished the year really strong. They only were 13-12 overall, but have everybody back except one senior. And I think the hard thing there is you're in Fisher's district, and what they're doing kind of overshadows everything you're doing. I think he's going to coach again. He's a younger guy. I think he'll do well somewhere. And I thought he was doing a good job there. So that one was a little surprising. Speedway opened. Chuck Bennett, not real happy with that. I'll have more on that coming, but he's kind of pushed out there. And then, there was a handful of others in our area. Gene Miller stepping down at Washington. That was not a surprise necessarily, but man, he coached a long time, did a great job every year down there at Washington. And but yeah, I mean, there's always going to be some surprises, and some you're kind of maybe not so much. Joe Buck at Pendleton Heights was probably not a surprise either. He had come back on an interim basis and then had coached there for 2 years. And, of course, he's a guy who's got his name on the court. They named the floor after him a couple of years ago. But, yeah, probably wasn't going to be the long-term guy there, but I thought did a pretty good job for a 2-year span. That'll be a job I think people will be curious about. And
Tipton as well.
Yeah, Tipton as well with Cliff. So, yeah, there's some pretty good jobs out there.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, Kyle. Appreciate it as always. Everybody go check out his work, of course. Nobody has better high school sports coverage than the Indianapolis Star and Kyle. So thank you so much for joining us.
And follow him on Twitter. He will keep you updated.
Oh, that's right.
He'll keep you updated throughout the games tomorrow. You can't be there in person, and you don't want to pay to stream it on the IHSA network, but you want to know what's going on, follow Kyle. He'll tell you.
I'll keep you posted. I'll try anyway.
Thanks so much once again to Kyle for joining the Central Indiana Sports Report. Always appreciate his time. And Michelle as well. I say it every time because it's true. She is the best. And thank you for listening. Always appreciate it. If you're interested in seeing the Central Indiana Sports Report continue to grow and thrive, please share these segments with your friends and family. Thank you in advance. Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media. And I love Susie.